Welcome back to the channel. In just an abuse of power, in my opinion, DC Comics has decided to blacklist Weird Science reviews. You guys have been doing this thing for about 10 years. I do have Jim from Weird Science, the man who started it all. What the hell is going on here, Jim? This is
I don't know. It is. I actually, when you said abuse of power, I thought you meant me. I was like, what is he doing here? No, yeah, it's ridiculous. The DC, I would say they're getting too big for their britches. I just think that they're blind to reality and trying to make everybody else blind to it as well.
You know what's crazy about this whole thing? And I did say abuse of power because they have, like, in theory, the power in the relationship, whatever, because they're the publisher. But there aren't a whole lot of people just willing to take their time and write comic book reviews anymore. You know, this isn't 20 years ago when you could get 50 legitimate reviews on a new comic book. This is an age where you might get 0 reviews on a comic book if it's after the 3rd issue. And yet you guys are basically going out of your way to review as many DC, Marvel, and independent comic books as possible every single week. And then DC kind of just treats you like shit.
Yeah, and they've done this before. And they use these review copies because that's really all they can hang over a lot of people, especially us. And we have been doing this stuff. We did the reviews way before we got the review copies. We got the review copies. They took them out. Nothing ever changes. It's nothing that's going to stop anything. But they want to let you know and kind of push that idea that they think and it is abuse of power. I'll go with you. The idea that, boy, if you end up being a little more positive, you can get these things back, but we're still going to watch you. And every time that this happens, I do end up getting angry and should be burning bridges. I end up telling them to go F themselves. And then eventually they'll give them back anyway, because like you said, nobody's reviewing the comics. No. They're doing this at a point where sales and interest are so low in comics in general, but DC, in particular, I just don't get it. I don't understand why they want to limit things. And I can say it's because of, not being 10 out of 10 positive on everything. But what's going on now, nobody's even looking at written reviews anymore because they are so ridiculously, biased or just sus, all that. It's just ridiculous.
Really, there's only 2 sites out there that do comic book reviews today that I personally trust. One of them is Weird Science. The other one is Batman News.
Yep.
We really obviously only review Batman comic books. There was one reviewer over at Bleeding Cool. I think his name was Hannibal Taboo. I don't think he's actually reviewing anymore. He was actually a pretty honest reviewer. But other than that, every other site out there is basically bought and paid for. And you can just tell by the scores that they give out consistently that they are not being critical. They're not being truthful about what you're actually seeing out there. And I know a lot of people actually trust Weird Science and specifically Batman News because you guys are willing to say this isn't great, or maybe this is just average instead of saying everything is amazing.
And there's a couple layers of this. The idea that people will say that every random Harley Quinn issue is as good as, say, Watchmen #5, stuff like that. Like the idea of a perfect comic, each and every review that they do is ridiculous. But you also see what goes on here and is why there's not a ton of reviews for books, like you said, after 3 issues or so. Number one, it's because there's no traffic going to the sites, and that's all they care about. But also, if they don't like something, they stop reviewing it. They're not going to give a bad score. Instead, they'll just pretend it's not happening. And that's the false positivity that drives me nuts with all review sites that do that, because you're not telling the whole picture. You're making yourself look positive by not telling people what is bad. And so what ends up happening, it's not comic book press. This isn't critics. These are fan sites that are there to be publicity for DC, and that's all they care about. They're sending the review copies out as, hey, we're going to send them to these other unpaid PR agents out there that are going to give everything a 10 out of 10. And it's bullcrap. But I don't think that they realize that people are too smart for that. People have, realized what's going on.
Well, and obviously they've never really probably been on the other side of the relationship here to where you're the ones like writing the reviews. I've done a ton of reviews here on the channel. 3 or 4 years ago, there were far more comic book reviews on this channel than there are today. And I can tell you why, because there's so much bad comics being produced by DC and Marvel right now that it becomes burdensome. It becomes just like it kind of like starts eating away at your soul. You're
it's
reading
depressing.
So many bad comics and you're having to talk about them. I've tried to put an entertaining spin on it. We do words of the week. every once in a while, if there's a comic book so bad, I'll highlight it there just because I think people need to know about it and it's newsworthy. But I just couldn't do it anymore in my soul. And what you guys are doing is really a public service, going out of your way to let the people know if this is a good series, is this worth your time? Even if we don't think it's good, these are the reasons that we don't like it. It might still be the comic book for you. And for DC to go out there and to become an obstacle between you and their customers because they think you're dangerous, it just reeks of just patheticness.
It does. Also, they don't realize how much better way do you get street cred than the idea of them? I mean, it really is. But here's the thing. When I review a comic, and I have, just to, toot my own horn, I have over 3,000 written reviews. I have reviewed a ton of comics. Just to let everybody know, my average score is a 7.2. After all of that, since the second year of, because I'm kind of positive. I am a positive guy, but I will review each and every issue as its own thing, hoping that it will get better. I don't go in with vendettas, no matter what people say or whatnot. I go in fresh, hoping that it'll be good. A lot of times it's not, but I go into it and I want to be honest. I want to explain why I like or not like something and be completely upfront with that. This is my opinion. You can have your own opinion, and that's fine. I'm not there to school people and tell them they're wrong. I'm just giving you my opinion, but I want to make sure that it is educated opinion that tells you why or whatnot, and it's honest. And I don't think any of those are being done on these sites. I read reviews, and people will use the idea of being non-spoiler to hide that they didn't even read the issue. I really think there's a lot of times that people skim issues and they already know what they're going to give it beforehand, and they just kind of wrap it around with that. And it's ridiculous, but those are the people who are being, awarded by DC to keep the
And there are sites out there that have taken your reviews and basically copied them and pasted them into their website and put their name on it.
Yep, it's happened like 3 or 4 times with a higher score. Like the idea that I'm sitting there giving something a 5 and they paste it on their deal and really just cut and paste, copy and paste, and give it a 8. And again, you can tell, and people, and I think that people who have come to YouTube, who are a lot of them frustrated with what is the comic book press, because there's no comic book press. The idea that they see honesty in the YouTube videos, your videos, a lot of others there. That's why I've come and taken my reviews over to YouTube as well. But the idea where if DC thinks that these 5 or so sites that they're going to allow, that these are the sites people are going to go out and buy comics based on their review, they're fooling themselves. Because there's no integrity.
And comicbook.com are not trendsetters anymore. They're not the tastemakers.
No,
in comic book culture at all. No one goes to those places unless they've already, drank the Kool-Aid and they're not looking for a critical eye anyway.
Yeah, exactly. If they want to go and pretend everything's great, or maybe they like something and want to verify that, they can go there. But I mean, just the idea of how we've played the game. There are times when DC will get a hold, you have to, interview this writer. Maybe we could set this up. And I always say no, because I don't want to get involved. A lot of people do, and, God bless them, but I don't want to get involved while reviewing somebody's comic that then I talk to them, become friends. And I don't want anything to skew the idea that I'm here to review the comics and I'm going to review them honestly. Nothing's going to, get in that way. And they do play games. They try to get you with that. And it's nonsense. But yeah, they dropped us with an email that just ended up saying that they didn't appreciate our type of coverage. And I said in the video that I did, we only have one type of coverage. We review comics.
Honest coverage?
Yeah, honest. Yeah, that's what it seems. And again, they don't realize that, we might not like certain books, but we also love others, and people use that. I said it, and I even said to you before we recorded the idea, people aren't going to stop buying a book that they enjoy just because me or you don't like it. They like it. They're going to get it, but they may pick up a new book that they might not have picked up because, oh my God, Wes likes that. I trust Wes. He's not going to steer me wrong. I'm going to get it. Oh, Jim liked that. People will try out some things when you have that honesty and integrity that people do try to count on, but it's hard in any sort of these review sites. And nobody's reviewing comics anymore anyway. So I don't know why they're limiting the coverage, except for the idea that they want to control the narrative of the review stuff. But it's silly.
So they didn't point out anything specific that you guys did, like your reviews for Tim Drake Robin were not very high, or you didn't like DC Pride 2023, or you didn't like our version of John Kent right now, so you're a bad guy. It wasn't nothing like that.
No, they'll end up sending things like, we hope that you review this. We hope you review this. But I think they're a little too smart to actually spell out like, hey, we don't like this, this, and this. They get very vague with it, but it's very obvious. And then in this email said, we're sorry you won't be reviewing DC Comics anymore. And what?
You're out of your mind.
You think that this is going to stop it? And almost like they're suggesting that, like it's some sort of threat, like, oh, it's tough. It's like, a mob guy comes in and you don't buy protection money, you don't pay him. And he's like, it's a real shame, you might be worried about them fires, and walks. It feels like a threat. And so at this point, and this has happened, I said a bunch of times, and usually I just keep quiet about it out. This time I'm done. I'm done with this manipulation. I'm done with this nonsense. So I did. I wrote back a very simple response: go F yourself. I don't want them anymore. I don't want your review copies. You're bullcrap. If you can't sit there and say, well, at least these guys are honest. I hope that they and look at themselves and the people they hire to do these books and realize it's not me giving a low score that's ruining things. It's your shit ass books that are ruining everything. And you got to fix that. And then, I'd love to.
Yeah, they play themselves. Like, you have some influence with your customers and everything like that. But DC's influence goes way wider than you or I ourselves, and what we're able to accomplish here on YouTube or on our websites and stuff like this. DC has poisoned the water with what DC has done. And they can't get out of their own way. And now they know that they got this really shitty event. They know Night Terrors is going to suck. And that's why you can't actually review DC Comics until that's over. Because they know you would be honest about it and be like, yeah, this actually sucks. And they shouldn't have stopped all their good comic books that people like right now.
Very odd that this happens right before Night Terrors with a K, the spookiest months, July and August. I'm guessing, if I didn't burn the bridge completely, that suddenly in September, when they actually have some things going on again, we reevaluated things. We're going to re-look at some stuff and whatnot. Because again, I'm not going to sit there and say that we're the be-all, end-all of anything, but we've been doing it a while, and even just our podcast.
You got 10 years of credibility, Jim.
Exactly. Damn them. And still, our podcast's pretty popular. We do it every week. We get a lot of that. And so the things and the people who I kind of think are going to get it's not anything to do with, well, it's a business matter and we're going to go with the biggest sites and whatnot. It's just the people that they don't even have to control. I mean, that's the problem. These people are eating out of their hand.
Your conscience can be paid for with a free digital comic book. You're a loser. I don't know what else to tell you.
Exactly. I'll even tell you, at the beginning when we first got the review copies, boy, they were sending me the actual comics. I was getting loads of trades, everything. And that was the first thing they pulled away. And the guy said, well, we're not going to be able to do this because, we can only give that to certain people and your things. I ended up sending them a picture. This shit's just stacking up in my basement. I read digitally anyway. But they try to do
me some long boxes, asshole.
Yeah, really, exactly. It's just in there. My wife was going nuts. It's all piling. So I end up, when this does happen, and a couple of the people involved, originally, they may not be involved now. It seems weird, but they were always nice enough. They would be upfront with things a little more and talk about things. But we ended up getting the review copies because I gave an issue of Batman and Robin Eternal a 3 out of 10. And they thought it was hilarious. The guy ended up saying he's never seen so many F-bombs in a review. And I thought, okay. And so I actually would give them props for all this time saying, you know what? I got to give them a little bit because they did give it to us. And we always thought that we were that, like, we're there to show that they're not sus with these things, that they ought. No, they don't care anymore because things are failing and they think it's because of people giving bad reviews. It's not that. It's not that. Why aren't you worried about these 10 out of 10s that aren't doing it? Because they're all nonsense. And
if everything's a 10, nothing's a 10. Doesn't
exactly. Now, again, you say about, there's been so many times on the podcast that we'll get done a show and we talked about 12 books and I didn't like one of them. I'm depressed. I end up afterwards like, why are we doing this? But we end up doing it, and the idea of it, we're not writing reviews for DC. I'm not
writing
writing
for the
reviews.
fans.
I'm writing it for people who
Yes.
like to see and hear and watch our reviews and let them know what I think about this stuff. And the thing that I like, and it's nothing, crazy, but personally, I love when people end up reading an issue and then saying, "Oh my God, Jim, I read this. You're going to hate it," because they get to know the reviewer.
Mm-hmm.
But since I started, I even went back to see my first review in 2013. It was for the Digital Batman 66 #1. That had like 30 reviews. Like no book gets that now. And when I look back, the scores, there's no 10 out of 10s for everything. It was very legit then. And since then, most of those sites have all gone away because it's not worth it to them, whatnot. And now these newer ones, they show up, and there are people who legitimately now have over 400 reviews, and their average score is a 9.8. How is that possible? And so what I do, because I talk to some of these people and they follow us because we've been around so long, I'll send them notes when they give a 9, and I'm like, "Man, you really ripped that one apart. It's so much lower than your average." And I'm like, "Oh man, what are you doing here?" And they don't even understand what I'm saying. They're like, "Oh no, I'm not." No, you usually your 9.8 is your average. That's everybody's 5. It's your 9.8. I mean, this is ridiculous. And they get mad, but again, just to warn people, and not to point out any of it, but to warn people, there are people that I've talked to that will say certain writers, I'll always give a 10 out of 10 because somehow their comics saved their life. Or the idea of, I'm going to give this, and certain sites have a algorithm going that you can never go past. You always have to average at least an 8 or above. It's a site out there that probably will keep the review copies, that if you give a 7, you best give a 9 for the next one because you got to maintain that average. So it's not real criticism. It's not real. It's all set up to just pump out fan service, blurbs. And the people who sit there and read and write these reviews just to get on a trade, the back of that to me, that just shows you right there. That's the red flag when you're on like,
I don't know, Jim. You pretended you were 12 years old.
I did because I wanted to get a letter into the Marvel deal, but it's because I give the letter. And what I like to do is I give little like inside jokes in the letters too to laugh at and then tell people. But I did do that. I've been on a couple trades, but it was legit stuff. One of them was like, the last one was Black Hammer, the first issue of Black Hammer. I got on the trade for saying that it felt like a classic comic book or something like that. After they started reprinting the trade, they took me off because there was too many big writers. I think Scott Snyder replaced my blurb.
Scott Snyder.
Son of a bitch.
What's crazy, Jim? You know what the last straw was?
What's that?
We know the most important comic book DC puts out each and every year is the DC Pride Anthology Special. Mm-hmm. They wanted you to review it, and you guys ignored it because you didn't want to embarrass them by talking about how shitty it was.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Again, that actually hurts me sometimes when I say, "Listen, I'm not even going to get involved with that. That's a landmine anyway." But I don't want to end up with that, not to them, but to everybody else. Like, I'll just leave that one alone. I'm not going to read it myself anyway. And yeah, they seem pissed off about that. At one point, they had accused us of being hateful. They accused us of just awful things at points because they only end up seeing surface level or hear things down the lane. I've been told that this creator told them this and that. It's nonsense. But I will tell you, when this happened, I have been gotten a hold of by a bunch of current DC creators now and some even former that end up saying, don't bow down to them. That they are assholes, and don't blame the creators for any of this. Don't blame anybody writing the comics now. It's the editors and the people in charge, the PR. It's not the writers. They struggle. I'm telling you, talking to a lot of them behind the scenes, they struggle as much with this stuff as everybody else does. And I give a lot of them credit when they end up getting a hold of me and realize that the 10 out of 10s mean nothing. And that if you give a legitimate review and, give points, whether it's good or bad, they do appreciate that either by reading the review and realizing, okay, maybe I have to change something up, or just appreciating that you like a comic and that they are good. Don't blame, the writers or the artists, obviously. But yeah, it's the higher ups and they're playing a game. They're trying to spin stuff at a point where their ship is sinking so fast that they have no clue what to do except to blame other people than themselves. And that's what they've done. That's what got them in this position anyway. If you don't like a comic nowadays, you're told that you're hateful. I go by this mantra of me liking a comic doesn't make me a good or bad person. That means I read comics, and this is my opinion. I'm not here to, have a badge of honor because I liked a certain thing or didn't like something. So everything that we do it honestly. We do it each issue. We mean what we say. And again, I have sus Gabe. I mean, that guy's giving Predator 9 or Predator number 1 and 9, right?
Man.
Never would tell Gabe, but me and you, just as a side, like a lot of times before we record these things or the aficionados, there are times when you will make fun of me about a score I gave because you don't agree, or, maybe it's lower than you thought as well, like something like a Deadly Duo, which you loved, and I didn't.
Oh yeah,
really
you
like
were way
that
off
much.
base on that.
Yeah,
you should be reviewing this,
and that's
not giving real good
and that's fine.
DC
and
should probably pull your cut.
That's probably why, but really, that's why Gabe reviewed it. He liked it. But again, I have my opinion. I'm not going to back down, and we have fun talking about it. But I've never said once to Gabe, "Yeah, you got to go lower at that. Oh, you got to go higher. Hey, we're worried about this." Everybody who writes the reviews, that's their own deal, and that's how we've always done it. And you would hope that a company now. Here's the thing, too. DC pulls the review copies. We get the review copies from every single other comic. There is not a comic book company that doesn't send us review copies every single week, including the manga stuff, Viz, Kodansha, all that stuff. They send me, now they're the ones sending me boatloads of trades and volumes and things like that. And they appreciate any coverage because they know that it's honest and the word gets out. So they go with it. DC, though, they're worried, I think, just because things have been so bad.
Well, I can tell you right now, as a public service that you guys are doing, I recognize the effort. I appreciate the effort, and I'm glad that you're not going to give up. You're still going to continue to cover DC Comics. Fuck those guys. If you can't take a little bit of criticism that's honest about the product that they're putting out right now, which for the most part is average to below average, although there are some exceptions out there with the Jeremy Adams, Mark Waid, some of the Josh Williamson stuff.
Yeah. And so the weird play is, I think I'm more positive right now than I've been in years. And they do that. But I think they're worried, like I said, about night terrors. And I think it's just nearsightedness. But just as a whole deal, again, you convinced me to do more YouTube stuff. And I owe it all to you. And I've been doing most, if not all, my reviews on YouTube. And I'm going to pick up that as well. Just because it seems like more people, you get more interactions. I write reviews and do this stuff so that I can, talk to some people because I have no friends at all. My family, ignores me. So I'm here to do that. And I really do like it, but I do give you big thanks. I owe it all to you. That's what I was saying.
During that video, Jim and I were talking about some of the inflation that's out there when it comes to comic book reviews and the scores that are out there. In fact, I made a video about this last year exposing just what an enormous problem this is for comic books and why you can't trust a vast majority of these reviews. If you haven't seen this, you need to see it right now. There's also a link in the video description.